What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I want to talk about what's going on with Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what data is coming out for tomorrow that could affect how the market moves, what the news is saying about Tesla, and what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. So anyways, let's talk about the markets, talk about what's going on with Tesla and all these different tickers. I want to break down some very important levels. So we look at Tesla on the 4-hour time frame, we have a potential cup and handle like structure, but don't forget we're very sensitive to this 232 to 230 area. If we lose 230 and we end up closing below it or we fail to hold it, then we could turn bearish if there's any bad news. If we're bullish, you want to see this thing try to break above 238 and continue to soar because we have an imbalance to fill up to about 242. But the question is, will Tesla get a bounce or not? Don't forget that near the end of the week, we have a very, very important Cybertruck event, and this could lead to some potential upside for Wednesday and Thursday. Now, from a technical standpoint, technicals for the medium term do look a bit more bullish for Tesla. And my only concern for Tesla is the fact that the overall market could act as an anchor. But with the event, we could see Tesla start to outperform it, especially towards the end of the week. And I think there's a good chance of that potentially happening. But first, I want to talk about some other events for Tesla, what the news is saying, and all of this could affect Tesla's share price going into tomorrow and beyond. Now, looking at the data thus far and the earnings, there's not really anything coming out for Monday. Same thing with Tuesday, there's not really much going on. But during the later days of the week, we have lots of retail earnings coming out, not to mention Dell on Thursday. And it's going to be very important. When it comes to economic data going into Monday, I just want to call out that we have new home sales at 10 o'clock a.m. At 10:30 a.m., we have the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index being reported. Then at about 11:30 a.m., we have the 6-month bill auction that could cause some volatility. Not to mention the 3-month coming out at 1 p.m. Now, this data, not anything is like way too, or I'm sorry, nothing is basically like way too significant, but this could cause some volatility, at least in the morning. But don't forget the week in terms of like data for the whole market is going to be kind of quiet until Wednesday. Wednesdays when we have the GDP numbers. Thursdays when we have PCE data coming out with some Fed speakers. And Fridays when we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. So we have 3 big days for Wednesday through Friday. Don't forget about that. Monday and Tuesday are going to be kind of quiet to start us off. Now, as far as Tesla goes, there's been some talk about Tesla investing about $2 billion in India, and they're hinging on import tax cuts for EVs, which is decent news so far. But we're going to be looking at the import duties thus far to see how this affects them. We're going to be watching for any changes thus far. As of right now, we haven't really seen this. And right now, it's very expensive to be producing in India because of the import tax thus far. This is once again very, very expensive for them, as we can see like the less expensive cars being taxed at like 70%. So we'll be watching to see how this affects Tesla. If there's any like news that comes out involving this, but thus far there's been a lot of interest in this, and Tesla is willing to invest, I believe, 500 million to about up to 2 billion, at least over the next couple of years. So this is some very, very big news, but nothing has been official yet until we get some more updates. If Tesla ends up getting the next updates and we see some like changes to the taxes, then this could really change these announcements, and something really big could still brew. Moving forward, I already went over the updates in my previous video from like Thursday/Friday. During those periods, Tesla's releasing the new FSD version 12, and there's some very, very nice updates, such as improvements to the neural networks, which is very, very useful for Tesla and these different companies. So with that being the case, I mean, they're going to become a lot more efficient. They're going to be depending more on machine learning than before. They're going to be eliminating more lines of code with the new update. On top of that, they're going to be once again using these neural nets in a much more efficient manner, and this could be much more useful than them. So when we watch to see what this causes for Tesla, if this leads to any like very, very big improvements, we'll be watching this as time goes on. But these small pieces of progress are still good news for Tesla. Now I'm seeing this headline coming out that Elon Musk has dismissed hybrid vehicles as a phase while Toyota doubled down on them. And this is once again some interesting stuff. Now, the news has come out that Toyota is going to be prioritizing hybrids over EVs, at least for the time being, because of the next macroeconomic factors that are basically affecting them. With them making that move, I respect it. I can understand why, but that doesn't change the fact that the EV market is going to be massive and Tesla is going to continue to maintain its dominance. If anything, this gives Tesla a bigger edge because of Toyota is kind of like stepping back a bit. Tesla has the opportunity to get a bigger market share, and I think that Tesla could use this to their advantage. Now, don't forget that there's still going to be some hardships for Tesla. Tesla's not necessarily in the clear given the current macros, but this news could be a little bit more positive for them since they are technically in competition with Toyota's EVs. So very mixed. Now let's just talk about the technicals. How is Tesla looking? Once again, if it breaks 238, we turn bullish. We have a potential uptrend being respected here as Tesla made a higher low. If we break below 232, watch 230. If we lose that, we have to see this thing try to bounce off like 225 to 226 and come back, or else Tesla could turn a bit more bearish. All right, so those are some important levels. What do I think Tesla's going to do? I think that we're going to start off kind of slow for the week. We might just see some sideways price action. Tesla's going to attempt to go higher, but the problem is the market may act as an anchor because SPY is looking a little weaker. The Nasdaq especially is looking weaker because of Apple, and I think that Tesla might just trade sideways for some time, range trade for a bit before getting some upside towards the end of the week. So I think that Tesla will eventually get up to 242.5 later on. But first off, we might start off kind of weak, trading sideways between 232 and about 238. As there's not much data coming out, I just don't expect anything too crazy. I think we're just going to be range bound, kind of boring just to start us off, but things could get much more exciting by Wednesday/Thursday in anticipation, of the Cybertruck launch event. That's what I think is very probable for Tesla because I think that this thing is still consolidating, kind of range trading for now. I think that it's going to be a little boring for the start of the week. There's not a whole lot coming out, and I think that we're going to see some buyers defend it at these lower levels as they've been doing for the past week. So you can see every time it hits like 232, 230, the buyers tend to defend it. I think this is going to continue. But like I said earlier, the market may act as an anchor for Tesla. The market may try to drag Tesla down just a little bit, but Tesla's going to just try to prevail as buyers will defend it, which is why we're going to see some like choppy price action, sideways price action, maybe some consolidation, and then we might see some upside later on during the week. So we might see Tesla pop a little bit towards 230, maybe a little bit higher. If we break 238, then we could see more upside. Then we might see rejection, it coming back down, just continue to trade sideways. Should get a very, very flat day, but I think later on, as time goes on, we're likely going to see some more upside going into like Wednesday/Thursday. So that's what I see as very probable. Watch for some just range bound price action for now. And I think that Tesla will later on make its way up to 242. May take a few days to get there, but I think it's going to eventually break maybe above that. So we'll be waiting to see during the Cybertruck event. There's definitely some upside potential with this current setup. So that being said, that's what's going on with Tesla thus far. I just wanted to mention that if you look at Tesla on the 4-hour, we're trying to base at our daily 200 EMA. So it's a very, very important support. Make sure you watch that very carefully as support to see if Tesla holds that. That is going to be key for the stock. Not to mention the 200 EMA on the daily. I think that Tesla's going to try to base here. I think it might like kind of trade sideways for a bit and eventually break out later on because we have a nice cup and handle like formation on the daily and the 4-hour time frame. So there might be some upside thanks to the Cybertruck event as we approach it. We might start off kind of choppy at first, and later on we should see some upsides. So that's what I'm seeing for Tesla. So watch for some range-bound price action and some upside later on, maybe going into the later days of the week. As far as SPY goes, I just want to call out that on the 4-hour time frame, we have a triple bearish divergence on the chart, developing into a quadruple bearish divergence potentially, and we have a potential signal that's suggesting it's going to see downside. Now, I'm saying that the signal suggests it's going to see that in the future, though. I'm not saying it's starting yet, so we have to watch for confirmation. It is possible that this pumps a little bit more before we get the rejection, or it could just reject from here. But I would not turn bearish until we truly break like 452 and we start to see a change in market structure. So I'm not like super bearish yet. It's just that the technical suggests there's going to be a bearish move soon. So we'll be watching this very carefully. Let's see if this thing loses 452. If that ends up being the case, we could turn a lot more bearish. Thus far, that hasn't been the case. Watch the trend line of support right here. This is like a rising wedge that's forming on SPY. You guys can see it just like this. Watch for a break to turn bearish before you turn bearish. So wait and see. Let's see if we get a break tomorrow, and let's see if 452 holds. If we lose that, that's when we could turn more bearish. We'll be watching this at least for now. If we pop a bit more, watch this resistance. Watch the highs we made in July, like around 457.5 or so. It is possible we pop more and then drop or just drop from here. But either way, the downside seems imminent because of some other stocks. If you look at Apple, Apple could cause some downside because this thing is starting to change directions. We got this nice rejection off this order block. And then on top of this, we have a sell reversal that's forming. Also want to call out that Apple has a quadruple bearish divergence, and it looks like it's going to be testing the 4-hour 50 EMA at 188. So I think that there's going to be some downside. I think that there's a risk of some downside potentially forming. And I think that this is going to be, once again, very, very pivotal for them as time goes on. So, with that being said, I just want to mention that with this quadruple bearish divergence and some potential downside, we'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. If we lose this 188 area, you're going to be watching that very carefully. And then don't forget that there's going to be a risk of some more downside for Apple, so that could slow SPY down. It is looking a bit more bearish. If you want to turn bullish, you want to see it get it back above 191. As of right now, it's not really there. And it looks like it's going to be testing 188 very, very soon. On the QQQ, we're seeing something very similar. This is looking a bit more bearish. We have a triple bearish divergence. Watch this thing at support right over here at 388. If we lose that, watch it come down to 384. Those are going to be key for the QQQ. I think there's a risk of some downside thanks to Apple and Nvidia. And we're going to be watching to see how this affects Tesla. There's a possible break off this wedge right here, but we'll be watching this carefully just to be safe. So make sure you watch that as time goes on. And last but not least, we're going to talk about Nvidia. Nvidia is looking a bit more bearish. We're on a downtrend thus far, but don't forget we have this key support at 468 to 472. We'll be watching to see if that holds us, but it looks like it has a little bit more downside coming. The chart is still looking bearish. Look for a little rebound and back to like 485, then a rejection. And I think that's going to eventually slowly grind down to 468 to 470. I think that there's going to be more downside. So we'll be watching that carefully. This could slow the markets down a bit. And there are some risks of downside. Don't turn super bearish until we get confirmation first. So I just wanted to call that out. I'm going to go over just a couple more. The IWM has a potential rejection that could be forming. Now, if this is an accumulation, it is possible that it kind of like backtest 176 and bounces. So I think that it might retrace just a little bit towards 176. And then we're going to be watching to see if buyers defend it. That's going to be very probable. Microsoft has a quadruple bearish divergence that's continuing to develop. If Microsoft loses 375, watch it retrace towards 371. There's going to be a risk of that, so just be very, very careful. But I think that it either pops a little bit more towards 380 than rejects, or rejects from here. I think that there could be a risk of downside. We have a potential slanted head and shoulders that possibly could be developing, but there's no sign yet. See if it pops more than drops, or if it drops from here. If we lose 375, I turn a little bit more bearish. I think there's a risk of that happening. On AMD, just like Nvidia, we could be approaching 125, which is where we have resistance for rejecting, or we could go a little higher towards 128 and then reject. We have a triple or even a quadruple bearish divergence, so watch that carefully. Might pop and drop or drop from here and retest this 118 area. On top of that, I just want to call out that the VIX is very oversold. We'll be watching the $12 area, the 12s on it, because this is the lowest we've seen in 52 weeks, which tells us that it still is risky to be buying at low levels like this. So just be very careful. That's not financial advice, by the way. We have a triple bullish divergence on the SQQQ. It suggests that it's going to be pushing for at least 16 soon. So maybe we're going to see some upside on this because of the QQQ slowing down. So just be very careful. The dollar could be reversed, but we need to see this establish a higher low. If it does so, we want to see it break 104. If it breaks the 50 EMA at 104, it could turn bullish, and we're going to be watching that very carefully. As far as Coinbase goes, we're going to be watching the resistance around this 118 to 120 area. If you reject right there, watch for some downside. There is a bearish divergence developing, and we're at a historical resistance area, especially if you look at like the weekly. So you just want to be very careful on Coinbase. We're at resistance right now, around this 117 area with the bearish divergence. Even the weekly has a bearish divergence technically. So just be careful. Let's see if this rejects or not. If it does so, there could be some downside. As far as Google goes, this is looking a little bit more bearish. We got this rejection right over here after this liquidity grab. And it looks like it's going to test to 136. It might rebound towards 138.5, then reject down to 136.7. Watch that very, very carefully. As far as Amazon goes, we have a potential bearish divergence developing right here. We're going to be watching if 145 holds. If it loses to 20 EMA, watch it come down to 143.8, then 141.5. There's a risk of some downside, but just be very careful for now. And Meta, in my opinion, is looking a bit more bearish. If it loses support right over here at this 335 area, watch 333 on Meta. If we lose that, it's going to start sinking down towards 320, 330, then 325. I think it's starting to look like it's going to turn off this bearish divergence, so just be very careful. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. As far as Tesla goes, we might start off kind of range bound. If it breaks 238 and manages to hold above that, we could turn bullish. I think that it's going to start off kind of range bound and break out later, unless it breaks 238 early on. But for now, I think Tesla has some potential thanks to the Cybertruck events. We'll be watching that very carefully. All right, guys. So that being said, thank you for listening. There could be some upside coming to Tesla later on. We might start off kind of sideways, but then there could be more upside coming later on. And that's what I'm seeing for Tesla thus far. All right, guys. So that's what I have for this one. Thank you for listening. Watch your levels very closely, and we will see how it goes. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Thanks again, and peace out.